program it to delay. You can program it to delay and send out, but I think you have to reprogram it to delay to the next one. So it's not foolproof, but it's better than typing it over again.
Yeah, sure. Cool. Yeah. Cool. Thanks.
Yeah. All right. Bianca, Cynthia, what did you write down as an issue that you face in the asynchronous?
Well, John, I'll kick in. John just asked the question because I have, I'm teaching it asynchronous, but I also have it in the announcements. Love to see you if you can, because I have a set time for those who want to see me face to face. I'm available Tuesday, Thursday from, 7:30 to 9. And I'll lecture. My lecture is recorded. I'll say, okay, definitely, ask me, email me. I'm noticing sometimes I have the same people that show up on my roster. It says 18 people, and I'm sending in announcements. I want to see rough drafts. I'm waiting. No rough drafts. I want to see, because we're doing a research paper. We're going to see topics. Give me your topics. Make sure. And I already given them a list and everything to make sure all of this, but I still have the same people. And then I'm not, only time I see them or I hear from them when I see the finished essay. And in my mind, I'm looking at this and it's more of, I wish you had sent this to me during rough draft time. Then I would not have to So I'm writing all these comments. And so I'm wondering if I give them announcements over and over, and I give them the announcements just before the class starts, or maybe I should be 24 hours or so before, but it's more of how do I, get something, because I don't get a lot of emails until it's, here's the essay, here's the assignment. Oh, okay, well, I'll send it then. And then you brought into the attention of they're not looking at it until 9 o'clock. And it's more of, are you guys serious right now? Really? Okay. Help me. Okay. That's it.
Hold on, Joy. Let me address just a few things, then I'll come back to you. So I think you just summarized the issue of teaching fully asynchronous. And again, my reference is at Chafee with 7 years of data. Retention rates are lower than synchronous. Success rates are lower than synchronous. And you just made a really good case to be teaching synchronously, which again, the point of this workshop is to promote that as one of the better teaching methods. Now, when it comes to offering a Zoom during an asynchronous class, I do the same thing at Chafee College. I offer, hey, I'm going to meet this day and I'm going to teach. It's going to be recorded. And I get about 5 people that show up on a regular basis. And it's very clear to me those 5 people are doing significantly better than those who do not attend. So what I started to do is I am dropping, I don't know what you want to call it, little Easter eggs is what they call it in the video game world. I'm dropping little nuggets of information that I later say, if you watch the video and I said something and you give it to me in an email, I'll give you extra credit. And I'll just be like, hey, my favorite number is 42. And just randomly in the middle of the video, I'll say that. And I'll say in the email, okay, everybody, what's my favorite number? And the only way for them to know it is to watch the video. Because
I like that. That's so fun.
What I have found is that even if they can't attend, those that watch the video are also doing better than those that are doing nothing. And so if you are using your hour or so to Zoom and actually teach, then you need to make sure that they're watching that video. And so that is one of my incentives right now, as I drop in a few nuggets of information that they will only know if they watch the video. And I try to make sure there's sort of one in the beginning, one in the middle, and one in the end. So that way you don't get students who just look for the hint to get the extra credit or whatever you want to do. So yeah, that's what I've been doing at Chafee lately to get them to get that incentive to watch the video. And again, it's for them to stagger their timing, because the video is going to take an hour, right? The rough draft takes an hour. The peer evaluation takes an hour. You can't do all that the day before it's due. So the goal of putting in those little Easter eggs is to get them to watch the video in advance, answer some questions in an email. I don't call it a quiz. I call it as extra credit Easter eggs or whatever you want to do to be creative. That's a great way to make sure those not attending watch your videos.
Okay.
All right, Joy, go ahead. You had your hand up. Or Bianca, do you have a follow-up question, Bianca? I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying thank you. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I have a strange thing probably happening this semester because my asynchronous class is doing much better. It's an English 1A plus 80. I don't know if it's because of the 80 extra stuff I have in 80 or something, but they're overall as a class, they're doing much better. The participation's much better. I have a lot of discussions where they participate and then they comment to each other, and I try to encourage them to encourage each other. My one that has the required mandatory class on Thursdays, I have less, I have, like you said, I have a great section of students. It might be like in between 5, 8, maybe even 10 sometimes that come and they participate and they talk during the class. And then I have the ones that are just, I can't see them, I can't hear them, they never do much of anything, and they don't turn things in either. And I think it's almost like I thought, because this is the first time I'm doing it, maybe they thought if they made it mandatory for them to attend, then they would go to the class and they'd get credit for that, or something like attending a high school class, like they wouldn't have to do work outside the class. I don't know what's up with them. It's like, because they chose a class that had some, where they had to go, and yet they still don't seem to be doing the work as much. Right. It might just be this specific group of students. I find it very hard to motivate some of these students, and I don't know if it's because of other things in their life, like they're working, they've got jobs in other classes. I'm not sure.
And, we are talking about what is our third semester of being online. And I read an article recently about Zoom fatigue, and they're talking about emotional burnout from this kind of learning. So what Spot did, I don't know if any of you are Spot certified.
I am.
Good. One of the things that they emphasize in Spot certification is the survey tool. Now in the training, they had talked about it being sort of a end of semester style tool, which is how I've kind of used it. But based on what you said, Joy, I would put together a brief survey to do a temperature check with your students, which is basically, how are you? How's it going? What is going on in your life that you think I might need to know, and how can I help you? I think what is needed is support. And so to branch off that idea, one advantage of synchronous teaching that I have found, and this was not done by me, I did not push this, my students did, but now I do push it, is that when students are face-to-face, when the class begins, or I'm sorry, before class begins, people talk to each other. And when class ends, people talk to each other. And so you've heard people and scientists argue about the social part that's been missing in online learning. With a synchronous class, students get to know each other really fast, very similar to how students get to know each other in a face-to-face class. And they will share with each other, at least in my experience, and all my classes have done this, is their own social media circles. So I've got students who talk to each other on Discord and GoWebMe or MeGoFund or whatever the number, I've lost all the names that they use, of circles of social media. And they are talking to each other outside of the classroom. And I try to encourage that on the first day. And I tell them, please don't invite me. I want this to be a safe place for you. I do not want to be involved in that. And it's meant for you guys to talk to each other and say, hey, did you do the assignment? Or can I help you with something? Or can I proofread your essay? And it's really designed for them. And you know what? It really works. Because I can see how they talk to each other, and some of them become friends during the semester because of the social aspect that is happening outside my synchronous classing. That is really hard to do in asynchronous. But in a synchronous, it's perfect. And it's another reason why the support is there. And I think that's why my retention is much, much higher. My success rates are much, much higher, and my attendance is higher. I have better attendance in a synchronous class than I do in a face-to-face class. Because if you think about this, if a student has to go to the doctor or take care of a child or take care of an elderly parent, they would skip class. Now, they don't have to. I've got students who have a baby on their lap while they're in class, but their camera's on. I've got students who are taking care of a sibling or an elderly parent, or I've had students literally driving while they are in class.
Oh, I do too.
Yeah.
I always say, make sure
you're
being more careful with the driving than with me.
Yeah, I don't want to see any typed Zoom messages while you're driving, please. And those students would typically be absent. They might be absent more than once during the semester, and they would miss material, and they would often drop the class. They're the ones that fall through the cracks. Synchronous teaching is perfect. They don't miss class anymore. And if they do have to walk away, guess what? Like I think one of you said, it's recorded, right? My classes that are synchronous are recorded. That is a fantastic tool for equity, because if a student does get distracted or has to walk away, and MLA is already complicated enough as it is, they can watch the video again. And a lot of what I said doesn't work in asynchronous, but does work really nicely in synchronous. All right, good. What else? What other things did any of you write down that is an issue with the asynchronous teaching?
Well, can I go?
Yeah, go ahead, Cynthia.
Okay. First off, I'm glad to hear like I'm not alone, because I was feeling that way. Like, what am I doing wrong? And I think you've already touched on it, Herschel, where students just aren't logging on. I feel like they signed up for the class, but it's almost like they forgot that they're actually enrolled in a class. So you already touched on that. I guess I wanted to know what other apps are available to us that we can use to engage our students. So I know Bianca had mentioned that she'll get students who are waiting to the last minute to submit an essay, and yet there are many issues with that essay. And so what I've done, I use Flipgrid to do check-ins with them, and then I'll respond back to them in a video. So that's a great way for them to see me. But other than say Flipgrid, the discussion forum, what else is available to us to engage them?
That's a great question. Thank you. I will admit that might be one of my weaknesses, because right now I use all my tools in Canvas. Even in my synchronous teaching, their Canvas is open, and I engage with them in Canvas while they're in Canvas, while they're with me on camera. So let me give an example, and then I'll see if anybody else here has recommendations for applications outside of Canvas. So this is one of my favorite things to do. Is I open up a discussion forum in Canvas. Discussion forums are updated instantly, but you have to refresh your screen. So as a teacher, you could see them posting as they post. So here's an example of a discussion forum technique that I love. So I have them go get an article on our theme. Our theme happens to be video games. So I have them go get an article on, let's say, video games and artwork. Are video games art? Should they be called art? And I'll give them 10 minutes to go on the internet and go get an article while I'm building the discussion forum. And then I will have them copy and paste the article right into the discussion forum. And as I refresh my screen, I can see the articles. And they're coming in, and I can talk about them like, hey, this one's really good. Everybody check out what John just posted. Oh, look at this one. Look at what Joy just posted. Hey, these are some great articles. And I try to encourage them that these are going to stay on the discussion forum so they can be used later. And I can see in real time as they post. And then later on, we'll go back and we interact with them. I have students write a brief summary of an article. They make an MLA. We're excited of the article. But it's all done on Canvas. So not only can I see it, it's saved. The other thing I do in Canvas is a great way to check their learning. Now, I don't ever see their notes. Even when I taught 1A face-to-face, I don't check notes. That was something I did a lot more in 67. But I've always wondered what it is they're writing down and what it is they're learning. So I make a discussion forum that basically says, hey, we just learned how to write a paragraph. So I want you to put in the discussion forum a brief summary of what you learned in writing that paragraph. And again, when they click submit, it will automatically show up on my screen. And I can see where I've hit a home run or I've struck out. Because if they all write the same things that they learned correctly, then I know I did it right. And if they all write the same things incorrectly, then I know I did it wrong. And it's a great way for that synchronous teaching element that I would have a hard time doing face-to-face. I can do really fast in the synchronous setting. So my argument is a discussion forum is a phenomenal tool in synchronous teaching, and you can be very creative with it. Now that I've said that, though, I want to hear from others here. How many of you use other apps outside of Canvas to help with your teaching? I'm curious what others use.
You know, I've considered, this is not something I've done, but I've considered using like recording, let's say on YouTube or something, and having like a YouTube channel, but I don't know if that's me putting in more work than necessary for, like, is it efficient? Is doing something like that efficient, right? Like if I'm putting out some of my lectures or extra supplementary information, kind of like a series or something like that on YouTube for them to access, you know, they could access it on their phones, they could access it on their iPads, they could do whatever, you know, but will I be getting the results that I want for the amount of work I'm putting in, right? Is kind of my hesitation with that.
Absolutely. Definitely there's pros and cons to making videos. And certainly there's an art to it. It could just be you. Like I've recorded me just in my own Zoom account lecturing, and I take that file right into Canvas with the subtitles that I edit in Word, and I just make my own video. But there's no special effects, there's no flashing colors and no diagrams or anything. So it's not, I would say, YouTube worthy, but it is certainly an alternative to a Zoom lecture where it's live. It's more a video they can watch anytime. So I've done one for a thesis, one for paragraph writing, one for in-text citation, and one for the works cited. And I use them in all my classes, even if I'm going to talk about it with students anyway. So it's just a tool that I have. So to answer Cynthia's question, like the idea of YouTube videos that either you create or already exist is definitely an outside tool that could work. Then John, I saw your hand, go ahead.
Yeah, I use YouTube all the time, and I use Google Docs. I find Google Docs much easier to grade than grading on Canvas. But that might be because I started grading on Google Docs maybe 10 years ago, and it's just a continuation of the thing. But the Canvas thing seems so terribly clunky. I used to use Facebook, but I found that my students don't use Facebook anymore, and I'm not going to get on TikTok because I'm not a dancing teenager. You know, but I wish they'd get back on Facebook for that reason only, not for any other reason. But yeah.
I use Jamboard. Have you heard of Jamboard?
No.
I use Jamboard with my high schoolers, and I can easily use it with my college students, but I don't know if that would be accessible, if it would be accessible or not. Or,
what is it? Can you describe it?
Can I show it to you?
Yeah, sure. I guess if you can share your screen, go for it.
I think, oh yeah, I can. Oh, I thought I had it up. Oh, there it is. So I'll type a question in the middle. So in this case, the students had agree or disagree. Actually, it was a statement, agree or disagree with the statement. And they use the Post-its to type out their opinion. And students actually, they enjoy it. It's interactive. And I could just drop the link in the chat and it opens it up. But is this something I can use with the college students?
Oh, I'd say absolutely. I have been in countless workshops here at Mount SAC. It may not be Jamboard, but it's very similar where it's like a Post-it style interaction, and then like the screen saves it with the Post-its on it so that it can be shared later. Yeah. I don't see a problem with it as long as they can get to it from within a link either that you send in Zoom or is already built into Canvas. And you could always put external links in Canvas.
But would it be accessible to students? You know,
I think so.
You know, I kind of have something to interject there on that question of accessibility. Whenever I've had my students go outside of the mold during the synchronous portion of a class, they sometimes have issues, Cynthia, because they're accessing Zoom like on like a singular device that maybe takes up that whole device or takes up their whole attention. And I've had students be like, hey, professor, I'm actually like, for this thing that you've asked me to do, I need to exit Zoom for a while I do it. Is that okay? And I always tell them, yeah, that's fine. Just come back in like 10 minutes or something, because I always give them time slots, right? But it's definitely something to consider on that idea of accessibility. You can't always assume the technology is there for the students to be able to do all the interesting things we would like them to, simultaneous to like Zoom and this and that and Canvas. Like, hey guys, okay, check out this announcement while you're on Zoom. And also, you know, Jamboard's here. And it might get a little hectic, but I don't think it's not worth trying. I think that it's actually, I love this Jamboard thing. I never heard of it. The second I saw it, I'm like, damn, I could use this like for so many things.
Yeah, well, I agree. I have had students say that they can't do something like copy and paste an article into Canvas while in Zoom. And I am very flexible. I say, okay, great. If you can do it when the class is over, that's fine, because it's just part of the participation at that moment. And having a student or two unable to do that at that exact moment, it's not the end of the world. It's totally okay. And if I come back to that discussion forum later and I see their post happen after class, it's not a problem. So you could look at it simply in two ways. If you want them to do that in real time with you in a synchronous setting, you might have a few who can't do it. But if you say, hey, this is going to be due at 10 o'clock at night, and if you can do it now, great. If not, you can do it later. Then those who will leave the Zoom when class is over can do it on their own time when they have access to that screen. So there's lots of ways to work it.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that something we could put on our Canvas, do you know? Or is there something similar that we could put on our Canvas? Because that was super cool.
Let me make a copy for all of you, and I'll drop the link, and I guess we could test it out.
So it's my understanding that through workshops I've taken at Mount Sac, a lot of times they send the link into the Zoom chat and we launch it outside. I have not seen any demonstration of it being integrated into Canvas, but I've seen it as an external link that anybody can click in Canvas and just launch it. However, there is a way to make a button. Like, here's an example. I'm missing my terminology all of a sudden. Like, I have the writing center as a hot button on the left margin where it says like home, syllabus, you know, assignments. One of them says the writing center. And it's an embedded link in that. So you could probably put Jamboard in a link as a button on the screen so they can launch it whenever they want to. That would probably be one of my solutions.
You could just put it in the chat. Like, my students don't need to go to like jamboard.com. I just drop the link in the chat and it opens up for them. Can you see the link now?
Yep. Oh, it's requiring, I think, your account to log in. It says unauthorized, and now I have to log in with my Gmail. But did anybody else get into it?
No, I couldn't. It's okay.
It says I need access.
Okay, let me try that again.
Yeah.
Oh, so
yeah, but at least we know what it's, you know, the way it's spelled and stuff. And
yeah,
it's so, Google.
Cynthia, it is a great tool. I have seen it, another one used with Post-its. And it is part of definitely meets the regular and effective contact because you're having them interact. And it would be similar to you bringing in big poster boards and Post-its. Like we've done at Communities of Practice, for example, or
I've
to
done
have students get up and walk around and do things. Here, you're having them do it external to the Zoom. I don't think that's a problem at all.
Try this link.
Okay. There we go.
And then on the left-hand side, there's a toolbar and there's Post-its there. That's all the students really need. Do you see the little Post-it?
It says question of the day.
And then there's a toolbar on the left-hand side.
I don't have a toolbar on my left.
Yeah, I don't think we can mess with it. At least it doesn't seem that way. It's view only. You can only view this document. To make changes, ask the owner for full edit access.
Okay, yeah. You make a copy and then, oh wait, you guys are in.
Yeah, we're in it, but it's only view only.
Why is that?
Yeah.
It is great though. I definitely want to use this. I've never heard of it before. This is awesome.
Let's see now. Can you see it now? Can you?
Now I need access again once I refresh the page.
All right, that's all right.
So here's a little toolbar. You can't see this.
No.
Yeah, I can see it now.
Oh yeah, well, because she's sharing screen.
Yeah.
Anyone with the link or restricted?
Anyone with the link.
I thought I had that. Let's see.
I like the little gremlins.
Yeah, while Cynthia is working on that, we appreciate that. It's a really cool app. Did anybody else have any other apps they use outside of Canvas for teaching techniques? And there are a lot out there. The one that I was told, but I've modified because it didn't work the way I wanted, is to have a wiki wall. So there are colleagues in the English department who told me about this, who actually use Wikipedia to make a student page that can be edited by their students. I didn't like the idea of having to go out into Wiki to make that. So the first time I used a wiki wall, I used the pages button. So, you can make a page in Canvas, right? And you can make it editable by students. So I made a page in Canvas. It was my wiki wall, and the students would edit in the wiki wall in Canvas and click save. But I found a bug in Canvas that if two students happen to be typing and save at the same time, one of them doesn't get posted. So I stopped using that. So what I use as a wiki wall is that I use the chat tool. So on Canvas, there's a built-in chat. And the great thing about it is that it has the student name, it has the timestamp when it was posted, and it's permanent. So you can see it all semester and they can go back and look at it. So a great way to have this work. This works, by the way, in asynchronous and synchronous, is to post a question, very similar to what you did, Cynthia, in Jamboard. And then it's just not as visual. You just have students respond in the chat like it's a wiki wall, and they can talk to each other. They can talk to you. They can ask questions. They can answer questions. They can put how they're feeling about something or an assignment that you have them do. And it's all within the chat button. So the concept of a wiki wall can be done outside of Canvas with an app, or it can be done within Canvas, similar to what you have in the Jamboard. All right. What other things did you write down about issues with asynchronous that I might be able to show you the advantage of synchronous?
I'm still having problems asking, like I'll ask people to say something and I've got the same people replying. So sometimes I'll even ask, but I find that people will be very shy. They don't want to speak up. And then I'll say, well, you could put it in chat. And that gets a little bit more response. But I'm still having, I think some people are very leery about, something about a Zoom session, just like you have people that are leery about speaking up in a classroom. And so other ways to encourage that is good. John may have an idea.
Yeah, John, go ahead, then I'll go after you.
I have that same problem, but I've been watching, so many people, observing so many people teaching. One of the greatest things I saw was at the start of the class, this teacher whose name is escaping me right now. I know her pretty well. I can't remember her name, but she'd have maybe 3 or 4 really serious questions, not like throwaway questions. And she'd ask the question, say, okay, everybody has a minute and a half or 5 minutes or however long it'll take to put it in the chat. And everybody has to put it in the chat, right? So you don't have to turn your thing, you don't have to use your voice, but it does break the tension. And after I saw her do that, everybody in the class was talking. It was the most active class I've seen. It was really, really well done. And it was things like, write a thesis for this question, because they were studying thesis statements at that time. And boom, they were all up, and they were all really active. It was great.
Well, and maybe it's just getting them sort of in the habit, like they're already responding, so then they continue. And that's part of the problem. When they don't respond, then it continues that way too.
Yeah, but making those kind of required and also involved answers, as opposed to just like, what's your favorite color kind of question, which I've used that, I don't know how many times. But seeing her do a really involved and serious question, it really made a big difference. It was fantastic.
And that's great, John. And if you think of her name, let us know. Some teachers will use the chat in Zoom, but the reason I don't do that is that when the Zoom is over, the chat goes away. I would do the exact same thing John said, but I would use the chat in Canvas, because that way, if a student does write a killer thesis, for example, or you want the students to go back a month later with new skills and readjust it, it's saved. So you as a teacher can decide, well, I want it to be in Zoom chat or Canvas chat. And that kind of goes to what John said. Not everyone can have both screens open. So that's something that you could make a call on. But the idea of posting a question where everybody is responding, yes, and the poll in Zoom as well. So one of the things I want to add to what John said is that I actually noticed this right away. That last semester in my English 1A class, it's one of the first times I had to cut things out of my my curriculum because I ran out of time teaching it. Why? Because I had so many questions. Joy, you're right. In a face-to-face class, I think we can always rely on like a core 5 people who will always raise their hand, always share, always talk. And the rest of the class will know that they're going to raise their hand and not necessarily contribute because someone's got it covered for them. And you do have those that are shy and those that sit in the back and those that do not want to be called on. One of the powers of online teaching, especially synchronous, is the chat ability, that I get more questions than I've ever had before because students are not afraid to type them. And so even though I will get a 4 or 5 core people to talk out loud when I'm interacting with my class during a Zoom meeting, I get 5 to 10 more than I would normally get who will type in the chat. And I multitask. I can read the chat while talking. And so they love it when I'm able to look at the chat and stop and go, hey, I've got a question from a student. Let me answer that right now, because they know that I'm doing both. So in my opinion, actually, Synchronous has a huge advantage, right? The ability to ask questions and they wouldn't normally ask in a face-to-face class. So I feel like students have more control of their education. There's a lot of ways to get them to ask questions. John was one. I do one where I use something called the Right Question Institute. I don't have time to go through that whole thing right now and teach it to you, but it is a way to generate questions. And we're going to be doing it in my class next week. Rebecca, yeah, she was my my TC last semester. No, not last semester, in the spring 2020. So it's great to have students learn how to ask questions. And sometimes when I teach something, I go, are there any questions? And I get nothing. I go, that's impossible. You have to be thinking of something. So let me go put you in breakout rooms and you ask each other questions. And then when we come back, each group has to report back on one question. There's a trick to get questions. Or I say something like, hey, I need everybody to write a question in the chat. And then, again, not the Zoom chat, the chat in Canvas. And then what I do is I don't answer them. I have the students answer them. So I'll say, okay, everybody post a question, 2 minutes, go. And then I'm going to say, okay, now you got 2 minutes, go find a question you know the answer to and respond to that student. So it'll say like, at Joy, here's the answer. At Bianca, here's the answer. And again, it's all saved so they can go back and look at it. So there's a lot of ways to get that question generated and going on during class. I think in some ways, Synchronous does make it better for students who are generally not going to ask in a face-to-face class.
Well, and I think you mentioning breakout rooms again, too. It's easier for my students. I noticed when I put them in a breakout room to talk to 5 others, 4 or 5 other students, then they feel shy when they think it's the whole class, Yeah. But if it's a little group, it's like, well, that's okay. I'm just chatting. And that's the same in a classroom.
Bingo. Which is why the breakout rooms is super important. For that comfort level that they would find face-to-face still exists in a synchronous world as well. So yeah, I use it all the time and I use it for all kinds of things. And again, I combine that with Canvas or, as Cynthia pointed out, other apps that are outside of Canvas. There's a lot of things you can do online that you really can't do easily in person. I find that I'm actually inventing more fun things to do online that I know that, hey, this might take too long in an in-class setting, or without a computer, I can't do these things the same way. So I'm finding it to be very powerful.
Yeah, I'm thinking if I go back in the classroom, I may still have a lot of stuff turned in on Canvas. It took a lot longer to make quizzes But I've realized once I've got the quiz in Canvas, I can make it so that Canvas grades it.
Yep.
And it's like, oh, that's so nice, especially because I can do some questions that are multiple choice and some that have multiple answers, different things that I can do. And they seem really useful and less work for me.
Great. All right, good. What else did anyone jot down earlier about some issues with the asynchronous that we could convert into positives about synchronous?
Well, some people are very talkative. They just really like being able to be on a Zoom session, whether it's synchronous or asynchronous, if it's some kind of way to connect to other students. I've noticed there's some students that even when I have asynchronous, I have office hours, optional Zoom sessions and everything. And there are students that really want to do that. And usually those students do better in the class. Not always. I've had one student this semester that is really good at talking in sessions, but she has some kind of difficulty with actually writing an essay. So,
I found that my synchronous office hours is not very helpful because I'm available on Wednesdays, say from 5 to 6, but the students who are taking my class, they have their schedules really differ. So I have to be really accommodating. So I'll meet with students, like this week I met with students at 7 o'clock, at noon, at 2:30, whatever works with their schedule to help them with their essay. Because like I said, the office hour time slot that I'm available just doesn't quite work for the majority of the students.
Do you have an in-class tutor also or not?
No.
I found that very helpful because I do meet several times a week, usually optional Zoom sessions, but I don't really want to meet every single day, whenever a student wants to, but I do have a tutor. You can go through the Writing Center and ask to have a tutor assigned to your class. And I've been very lucky in getting that. And it's been really helpful, especially if you get the same tutor for a while.
Yes.
Because they get to know you, and especially if you have some of the same assignments, and can be really helpful in, I have my Zoom session, but my tutor has a set Zoom session, and he does tutoring where students can make online appointments with him for, a Zoom session to work on an essay or something also. So that gives me an extra hand that I find very helpful.
I do use the Writing Center and they're great, but the students wanted some extra help. And you're right, I didn't want to meet every day either, but I just did.
Well, and the thing is if I have sent students to the Writing Center, and the tutor's there many times. I think it's great. But if they do send out one of those emails saying, would you like a tutor assigned to your class? Mm-hmm. They usually do that before the semester. You can ask about it and see. Sometimes they don't have enough tutors, but if they do, you could communicate with the tutor, what you're looking for and what you would like. And they have some really good tutors that can give you a little extra help with the students sometimes. And sometimes students feel a little less, I don't know why, I try to be very friendly, but sometimes students feel a little less pressured, they feel more comfortable brainstorming with my tutor than with me. Oh, I don't want to talk to the teacher yet. I don't really have enough ideas.
Yeah.
But they'll feel comfortable talking to my tutor. And I like it that I have an in-class tutor because he's if I'm having them read a story or watch a film, he's done that. So he's a little more familiar with my material and my assignments and stuff.
Right.
Cynthia, on behalf of your students, thank you for being so flexible, for having your office hours rotate based on their needs. I mean, I can't speak for all colleagues, but that is something that should be recognized and appreciated.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And I do that a little bit, but it's just I don't think I could handle every day.
Yeah, the one thing I want to be clear that you said so that I understand is that you said you get less students in your office hours in your synchronous classes. Did I understand you right?
No, I have 2 asynchronous classes, but my office hours, those are set hours.
Yep.
Not like they're reaching out to me during those hours. And I thought, well, maybe they're working, so I need to be more accommodating. So if I'm home at 7 o'clock, I don't mind helping them. And then I'm here at the high school if I have time. Then I'll meet with them in the afternoon. So this week I'm being really accommodating because their essays due. But the Flipgrid, I'm trying that with my English 1C, where I'm going to do checks with them using the video. So the first step is I need to see their research questions and their topic. And they're going to pose any questions on that video. And then I will reply, give them some feedback using the video as well.
Okay. Yeah, in terms of the asynchronous office hours, I did that at Chafee last semester, but I had to tell the school what I would be doing before I did it. So I had to keep it set. I couldn't predict where I might need them. So I kept them on Thursdays at 10 a.m., right? And for the entire semester, I had one student show up. It was the same student for each one. And he didn't need any help. He just wanted to talk. So great. But then what about the other 29 students, right? So I agree with the synchronous. It's not so much as a problem because they're going to see you face to face. And if they have questions, it's usually going to come, during that class meeting or before and after class. Students ask to talk to me all the time after. It's not a problem, right? But I do agree. The asynchronous office hours, I've had very bad luck with them as well. And I think it goes back to what I said earlier. Some students do not check their Canvas and their email until a specific time, and it's going to be long past when you have your office hours. Some might only check it once a week. Some might check it only once a night. Some might open it on Sunday. And your office hour email has already gone out. They're not aware of it. So I don't have a solution for that one. But in synchronous teaching, it's not as much of a problem.
I worry about that too, because the tendency for most teachers is to work themselves until they're dead. So if you're offering 10 hours of office hours a week, which I've done, last year I was doing 20 hours, right when the thing closed down.
Yeah.
I did more than 20 hours a week. It was
9 to noon every day.
9 to noon every single day. And I think that can be dangerous. So
learn to lead to burnout.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely.
And especially if you say you're there and then nobody's there. But what I'll do is sometimes I'll be grading papers and I'll send out an email and I'll say, hey, I've planned to grade papers for 4 hours. Pretty much I'm going to be here on my computer for 4 hours. If you want to talk to me for a while, 15 minutes, a half hour, or something like that, I'll stop grading papers and I'll talk to you. Just email me. It'll take me like 5 minutes to get into Zoom, or whatever. And sometimes I do that and I'll work with the student and I'll even send an email out. Okay, I'm on Zoom now for 15 minutes or a half hour if somebody else wants to join. But otherwise, it's like, sometimes I've set like, I'll do an optional Zoom this weekend at 10 and then I feel set to be there and nobody shows up.
Yep.
So, but yeah, sometimes I have some students that they email me and they go, hey, are you available now? Because I'll say, you can email me and see if I'm available. And if I am, I'll meet with you for a while.
That's great.
But that's not set. It's not like I'm going to be here just for that for this many hours. Or it's like,
Yeah, don't feel obligated to respond to every email instantly and all night, day and night. I believe the side letter that was set during the pandemic originally was that professors would respond, I think, with 24 hours. And you should put that on your syllabus. Yes. That, any email you get that you'll respond within 24 hours. And if you do not want to be communicating on the weekend, then also put that in the syllabus. So that way students have an expectation of when to reach you and they can't say, well, I emailed Joy and she didn't respond. Well, what's the syllabus say? Okay, you got to give her 24 hours to respond. And that way you yourself are not locked into constantly sending emails.
Yeah, Michelle has a good little disclaimer at the bottom of her emails right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really appropriate one, which is to say, you don't feel that you have to overwork yourself and kill yourself. These are special circumstances, but you matter too.
Yep. Oh, great. This has been a good dialogue. What else did you write down? We'll do one more. Write down for an issue with the asynchronous teaching.
I saw the thing here for synchronous was John was saying that sometimes routine is really useful for some students. You know, in the chat.
Yeah. And, you know, synchronous has an advantage that we haven't even talked about yet. You know, there are people who want to go to college. They just can't. And let's look at some reasons why, for example. And I'm not trying to use any stereotype. I'm just trying to say that there are things out there that prevent people from going to college. Examples: child at home, childcare, elderly care, job, transportation. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? But they want to go to school. And I feel that synchronous could be a way to get those students who want to go to school to be able to go. Because if now those things are no longer obstacles, and I'm sure we've all had students who drive, they tell me they drive an hour to campus and they leave 3 hours early because they have to find parking.
Oh, I had students that were sisters that used to come on the bus from Rialto. It was a 2-hour trip each way.
Oh, yeah. Right.
And they said that that was okay. That's where they did their homework and they'd brainstorm with each other and everything. And it was like, oh, okay.
And those students deserve a round of applause for that dedication. But just imagine how much easier things might get in the world for those who have a struggle or an issue of any kind to take classes online if they know it's synchronous. Now, I made this argument last semester. And here's the funny thing. Talking to Michelle and Kimmy in a dialogue, they themselves recognize now that more students sign up for synchronous than asynchronous. In fact, I think she said a lot of the classes that were cut this spring happened to be those in asynchronous. Those were the lowest enrollments. Yeah.
Actually, they cut one of my classes that was synchronous.
Oh.
Like 2 weeks before it started. No, it was asynchronous. I'm sorry. I had 2 asynchronous classes. They kept one, they dropped the other one. So I lost one of my classes. And then it was like 3 days before class started, they said, can you do one that's synchronous, asynchronous, which is what you call the remote blend.
Yeah, the remote blended, yeah.
So I went on and I'm doing that. And I don't know why, but really this semester I'm having a lot more luck. Maybe it was because it was a late start, late add.
Could be.
But the one that has the blend, that's the one. I don't know if people signed up for it thinking this will make me go, because I'm having a lot harder time with those students turning things in and doing work and even showing up, you know, than the asynchronous, I have a lot higher success rate right now. But it may be because my first remote blend class was a late add. You know, so it's the people that are adding very late to try to get a class.
Oh, and Cynthia just wrote about knowing the difference. Oh, I will absolutely concur that the communication with faculty and staff is probably far greater than the college to students. And yes, I have had a student had to drop because they're like, oh, you mean I can't just take the class whenever I want? I'm like, no, unfortunately, this is treated like I would take role in a face-to-face class. You have to be here. You can't take the whole class online. Whenever you feel like it. This is a synchronous class, and that student had no clue what those words meant. So there is definitely a gap in not knowing the differences.
Yeah, what do you do? I have only one student that is not showing up, and I'm going to have to penalize you. You have to make these up with optional Zoom hours or something. But he still hasn't responded about it. So do I just drop him eventually for not, like I said, he's not doing well anyway, so I'm not really worried about it right now, but
the answer I was given when I asked that question is if you're teaching a truly synchronous class, treat it as you would face-to-face. The only difference is that you're talking to cameras on computer monitors.
So normally you drop them after so many minutes.
If you have a policy in your syllabus that drops students after a certain time, give them every way which you can give them the benefit of the doubt to communicate with you. But at some point, you will treat the class like it would be face-to-face.
Okay.
That's what I've been told.
Okay.
Yeah. So about what we were talking about earlier, that this, you know, people were surprised that Synchronous was doing so well, and I'm 99% convinced that's because the model they were using were people who were choosing to be online students. And that's a very small percentage as opposed to now everybody's an online student. So all those things we thought of as best practices don't make sense as best practices because it's a unique situation, right? We had to throw all that stuff out. So I think, yeah, it's because Synchronous works better for most because most aren't used to being online students. They're used to being face-to-face students.
And we get to maintain the best parts of ourselves when we teach synchronously, because you can still do a lot of the same things, as I said before, if not more. And I don't even want to get into it, but there is definitely studies out there about what makes an asynchronous student successful and not successful. And it's worth reading those things because it's really hard to keep high retention and success rates if the students themselves do not know how to be an asynchronous student. But that's a whole different dialogue.
So can I answer that one?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think if the student is not actively participating every week for a while, you can drop them. I would email them and say that I'm going to happen first. It's going to happen, but it's a kindness to them to drop them if they're missing week after week after week of responses and that sort of thing. They're not going to catch up. They're just going to fail.
You know, I've had a few students that said, I had COVID, or I had this, or I had that. And I'll say, well, I won't drop you, but you have to make up the work. And then they end up dropping anyways because they get so backlogged, they can't do it all.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if I get backlogged with 3 weeks of a math class, I would be done. And I figure most students look at our classes the way we look at math classes, you know.
Yeah, and that would be a good idea too, though. Herschel's right, having a policy in the syllabus before dropping them. But I had one student that came the first week and then she didn't show up for 7 weeks. And I emailed her and she didn't reply and I dropped her. And then she came on with a reply and said, I'm sorry, I had COVID. I haven't been checking my emails or Canvas for many weeks. And I just did. And I realized, is there any way to add me back on? And I said, you know, you've missed like half the semester. I think it would be better now. But then I explained, but you got an EW. It's an excused withdrawal. It won't affect your GPA or anything, you know. And then I didn't hear back from her after that. Yeah, but it was very nice.
Joy is totally right. It's important for students to know their rights right now for dropping. And I believe Academic Senate has announced that information regarding students can drop past week 10, and there's new codes about the emergency for dropping.
They can drop up till like June 6th.
Yeah. And
with an EW.
Yeah, that's know your rights kind of thing. And I would definitely promote that so that students don't feel the added pressure of what we do beyond the world they already live in. So if you can help someone and say, look, I see that this might be happening to you. I want you to consider, here are your options, and just copy and paste Chief's email or send them the link at Mount SAC that shows them what their rights are to drop. Yeah. I do that still. And from the day one, I say, you guys know your rights. This is unique times, and I don't want you to have any pressure beyond the real world that's already given you. But yeah, but Joy, you're right. That's why I don't have that policy. I tell my students I only drop day one so I can add students. After that, I don't drop, because I've had the philosophy from different schools of students have a right to fail. And I've encountered situations where I thought I was doing the right thing by dropping them, and it turns out they're like, no, you did that. Now I can't do these X, Y, and Z things, and how dare you? And this is not in your syllabus. So now I keep it straight up in my syllabus, real simple. And I never use the words, I think you should drop. I always say, here's where you're at in your score. Here's what's left in the class. Here's what you need to do to get where you want to go. All I can give you is the mathematics. I'm not trying to give you any false hope. And here are some of your options that you might want to explore. And I always end it with, and I'm teaching the same class in the summer or in the fall if I know my schedule. So I try to make it as positive as possible so that they feel that I'm on their side.
I do the same thing, saying I'm teaching the same class. During the pandemic, I'm pretty much doing the same thing, so that if somebody takes it one time and can't finish for some reason, they can do it another time. I think Mount SAC has a thing that if they don't get a passing grade, they've been doing, like, if you get an F in the class, it's been transferred to an EW anyways.
Even if you seriously?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I don't think they've been getting an F on their transcript.
Right.
Wow, I don't think I read the side letter that way.
Even when you
I haven't seen that.
When you drop a student, I think it says EW.
Yeah, it says EW, and I think they have it even at the end. It might translate over, but you know, you could always
dropping a student during the semester past week 2. That's where the EW shows up.
Yeah, I think if you wait, even if you like in June, they have not done any papers. You know, there's no way they can pass. You can wait till June and then drop them all with an EW. Those people that you know are going to get an F.
The EW doesn't show up in the first 2 weeks. That's a
no, but it does after that. Yeah, and so you might want to like, hey, this person has only done 1 paper out of 6.
Okay,
I can just drop them with an EW in the last.
Got it.
But
John, can you verify for me though? That might be a question that requires someone beyond us. Does an F turn into an EW? Because I don't know that.
I have not heard that. So
I'm not sure about that, but I know you can drop up until like June 6th or something.
That I know. Yeah.
As an EW. But yeah, John, could you check? Because I think one semester it did say something about, you know, like if they get an F, it will change to an EW. I don't know if they're still doing that this semester or not, but maybe I misunderstood, but I think it said that for another semester.
Yeah, I'll definitely ask about that. That's interesting.
And I have a meeting at 2:00. I might be able to get an answer at that point as well.
Great.
Yeah, and if anybody finds out, email me and let me know, because this is a problem I've had in the past. I mean, I usually just sit there and say, you're going to ask a Mount SAC counselor, because they'll have a policy and I'll learn it and I know it. And then it's like, but what if it changed this semester?
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and so I hate saying something because I haven't checked it this semester.
Herschel, if you find out, would you tell me, and I will do something to all the part-timers.
Exactly. Yep. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna be ending soon here. So let's ask this question. What are some of the positives that some of you have already experienced in the synchronous teaching? Because it looks like a lot of you have already done remote blended or the synchronous. Don't take my word for it. What have you encountered that is so positive about the synchronous teaching?
I've got 2 things. One is I've had students who had to go back to China. Normally that would be in the end of their school career, you know. And so this time that was great. Then my other one was a benefit to us, and that was Ned, who's moved back to Ohio during this time. And he's maintained, you know, he's been going back and forth to Ohio and here. He's been maintaining his class. It gives us extraordinary flexibility.
Yes, I agree with you, John. Not only for us, but a lot of people are now switching, they've moved. They've actually, like, I know there's some other colleges where people were working on campus where they've now got a deal where they're going to stay remote.
Yeah.
And they're moving to another state where they can afford a house so much easier, and they don't have to pay as much money. They're still earning from here, but they're living in Kentucky or in, you know, some other, like, I just had a friend who bought a house in Kentucky for $110,000, and he's going to be making his wages here from not Mount SAC, but another college, and working from back there. And they've promised him that it's going to continue, even if the pandemic ends, because he's a really good employee, you know, so we'll see how that works, but he's going to be saving a lot of money that way. And his kids live back there. So that's one reason he's going back there, you know, so he'll be like within distance of seeing his kids, and he'll be able to work out here remotely, you know.
Hey, if they do that, I might move back to Pennsylvania, you know, who knows? Maybe I'll move back to New York.
You know, because it's like, if it works with your life, with your family and all that kind of stuff, it can be really nice. I know like some relatives, they're going to have 3 of them living close together because they're all working remotely now.
So again, as John said, and you know, as some of us have noticed, I had a student who told me yesterday that she's with her sick father in Mexico, and in an email, and I was like, but wait, you were on Zoom yesterday. And it dawned on me that she got to stay interacting with the class because of the fact that we were on Zoom, and didn't miss anything, even though she's not, you know, in her house somewhere near Mount SAC, for example. And so I had a student stuck in Brazil because of the pandemic, couldn't fly back, took my whole class in Brazil. And I applaud those students. And I think the synchronous style teaching gives students who need that kind of learning and opportunity to go to college, an advantage to be able to do so. And that's why I hope, John and others who have the ear of the department, when we go back to what we call full normal, I hope there are some sections still synchronous. It doesn't have to be me teaching it, but I really feel that there are students who will take synchronous classes and can definitely benefit from that mode of instruction.
I think you're right, Herschel, in that some students will want synchronous classes, some will want asynchronous classes and do it online. They've gotten used to it, or they're more comfortable with it, or they have a health issue or whatever. Right. I think we'll get more classes in the classroom, but I think there's a call for a continuation, more distance learning than we used to have.
Sure.
And that I'm sure would be supported by the college. I'm sorry, by the department. We need to also get the college on board. And that's been an issue, I believe. I believe the issue is the fear that it becomes a correspondence course, and then we lose our accreditation. But I think we've proved in the last year that we can do it without being a correspondence school. We can have all the standards we ever set.
Well, that's negotiations, and unfortunately, I can't say anything about what's being discussed. But all I can say is that that's all being discussed in many ways, both positive and negative. I'll just leave it at that. So yes, we are very well aware that. Here's an example. The word synchronous wasn't even in Spot until recently. And the word synchronous isn't even in the contract, period. So we're inventing almost a new language and a new mode of teaching that wasn't even covered in the contract. So it obviously needs to be something that's addressed.
Yes.
And John, I want you to know that I'm not saying that all classes should be synchronous, because I do realize that there's a demand to be on campus, and I want teachers to have the same equitable choices that students would have when it comes to their mode of teaching. So, when I heard, and this is between us, the president say, "Oh, we're going to all be back on campus," and I'm like, yeah, that may not work for everyone. And what about the students who are not vaccinated, or work on the front line, and or have elderly people at home that they take care of, or children with some kind of pre-existing condition? There's so many reasons why to demand everyone to be on campus doesn't really work. So if John wants to be on campus, I support that. And if Joy wants to be at home synchronous, I support that. And I think that helps students. At the least, it helps students have choices.
Well, especially like your student that had to go to Brazil for a semester or something like that. That's so great that the student could continue at the Mount SAC education for that semester without going, now I have to have a whole semester not at Mount SAC because I have to be here for a while.
I think also, if we're going to demand students be on campus, we need to fix the Foothill Transit situation, which is, it's so difficult to get on campus through the buses for most places where people need it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Joy, I feel like I cut you off there.
No, I was pretty much done. I just was saying a little more on the last thing. But with the buses, I think the buses should run more frequently too, and more connections, because I remember when I was driving around campus and I had stopped at a stop sign and I started up again, and a kid ran full tilt like, wow, that person must be in the running team, because he was trying to get down to the bus because he knew that was his bus and it was probably going to be another hour before the next one came. And he was like on a mad dash to get to the bus that was there that was loading students. And I stopped immediately, and nothing happened, but I just thought, wow, I'm glad I'd stopped at a stop sign and I was driving carefully, because he just like barreled through, across the things, the street. So I was like, whoa.
And that would all go away in a synchronous world.
Yeah, I rode the buses for years, and what's frustrating is when they're late, but what's more frustrating is when they're early.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's awful.
And then you miss your bus by 5 minutes, and it's like, great, now I've got to wait another hour and a half for the next one.
Yeah.
It's like when I was in England, and it was a long time ago, you never worried about that because the buses came by about every 10 minutes for everywhere. It's like for most places. In London, they'd come by every minute. It's like, you don't worry about it. You just sit here and you wait for your bus. What are you talking about?
All right. Well, I feel really good about our dialogue. John, I don't know if we have to go all the way to 2:00. So is there any other final thoughts or questions on the advantages of teaching synchronously in the synchronous world?
I just want to reinforce what John Dano said. He just says choices are really great. Choices are necessary. The more choices, because every student is an individual, you know? And so allowing them to have different choices, because different choices, it's going to work differently for everybody. The more choices, possibilities, the better. And synchronous is great for some students, and it should stay.
Yeah, I agree. We're talking about a college of equity. That is a mode of equity. Go ahead, John.
I was about to say almost the very same thing, mostly because, I mean, it's fresh in my mind because I think like many colleagues that we know, I applied for the full-time position, and one of the major factors in the application that they kind of pound on your head several times and ask you to talk about is what is student equity to you? How are you going to equitably serve our students? And if there's any silver lining in this pandemic, and it is indeed just a lining because this has been a very kind of rough time for most of us, but if there's anything at all, is that it's allowed us to re-examine how equity functions and given us more tools in our kind of toolkit to work with our students and work with one another. Like John, you were saying, it's so great for our fellow faculty members too. It is. It allows us flexibility that we wouldn't have otherwise even had the vocabulary to understand. But now we understand, okay, wait, just like you were saying, synchronous wasn't even part of SPOT before, but now it is. And I wonder in a year, 2 years, how it's going to even look because, this pandemic may kind of lag or linger or so on. So just in it, basically expanding upon what you started with the idea of equity is, I think that's one of the major strengths of remote or distance learning as another tool, which is why choices are important going forward.
Yeah, and I'd like to even reinforce that more, Herschel. If you're talking to people trying to make decisions for future, it's like if you really believe in an equitable atmosphere at the campus, then you need to allow these choices. Because otherwise you could almost be saying, okay, you can't have a class and meet with your teacher 2 times a week if you have kids and can't afford a childcare.
Exactly.
Right? But it's like a mother could take an evening class that's synchronous, put her kids down to bed or something, and then come online and have the class.
Yeah. And don't think that we have reached the limits of what Canvas can do and outside apps can do and how we could use them. I mean, sometimes I'm riding my bike and I go, hey, I'm going to use the survey tool in Canvas and in Zoom today because, well, I didn't use it last time and I want something new to freshen it up. And I'm constantly inventing new ways to use some of the built-in tools in Canvas. And when I start exploring tools outside of Canvas, I mean, the limitations are endless here. I mean, you can really start to build a course vastly different than a face-to-face class. Like, for example, I said, getting them for me to see their notes. I don't have time to do that in a face-to-face class. That takes too long. But to type it into Canvas in just a few seconds and post it is really quick. And I can see where they're learning and what they're not learning and how I can improve what I'm trying to teach them. Well, thank you everybody for being here. I greatly appreciate it. Hopefully you do feel that synchronous is a mode that you might be interested in. And again, as I said, I'm constantly evolving as well. So if you are teaching anything synchronously and you come up with some cool things, let me drop my email into the chat. Feel free to email me. If I invent something that changes the world in Canvas, I will let you know as well.
Where are the professors with coding ability in the English department? Because we should just make an app that revolutionizes things. I'm telling you.
Well, I started as computer science long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. But I failed programming, and I switched to philosophy, and there leads my liberal arts degrees. So I have the ideas on how to do exactly what you said. I just can't program. So I do need to find a computer science major who can write me the code to do what I want it to do. But I'm not far away from what you're thinking, John. I've got ideas.
Very good. Very good.
The Venn diagram of nerds between literature and coding.
Hey, you know, maybe after I retire from English, you know, I don't know. I used to be a lot better in math. I was in air traffic control for a short time. Oh. And I've actually created databases which has some coding and stuff. So I don't know. We'll see. It's an idea for when I have more time.
Yeah. Well, everybody, I'm done. John, you got anything you want to add?
No, thank you so much. Thank you for doing this for us.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you very much, Virgil. This has been very useful for me.
You might see it again on the Fall Flex Day. I've been told by Spot that they might think this would be a good idea, and the Flex Day application for fall is due tomorrow. So now that I've done this twice, I might think that this would work for the whole campus.
Yeah, I think it would, and I think it would reinforce that we need to keep this type of teaching, synchronous teaching,
and keep the discourse going around it. As long as there's interest from the faculty, the school is kind of going to be like, okay, there's probably interest from the students as well. So just to keep it going.
Yeah.
Yeah, because otherwise there's this whole group of students that might be left out that would enroll, but they can't come on campus because of things in their situation, their family or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree.